Good evening and welcome back to Church Unplugged with Shield of Faith. We are so excited and so blessed that you have joined us this evening for our conversation. I am so excited to introduce the we have our amazing here at Shield. We also have Linus Akano joining us, and he is Shield of Faith family. History firm. So we're super excited and looking forward to the things that they have to say this evening. My name is Jade Ruggarello. I will be your unseen host for tonight's discussion. Any comments you'd like to share, we love engaging with you guys, and we will do our best to address any comments that we having a good Wednesday. Well, I'm super excited for tonight, especially in the current state of the world. We're going to be talking about finances, managing financial investments, so many different things. I know it's kind of a broad topic, so I just kind of wanted to start off this by asking just some of the work that you do. What would be one piece of advice you would give to somebody who is looking to become financially independent of the state of life that they be in?
Well, thank you, Jay, with these two fantastic gentlemen. Let me say and preface my response by first saying, as a Christian, I think it's important when we talk about financial independence that we do it from as well as also a God perspective. And I think part of that means that there really isn't such a thing as financial independence. Money, everything else is a to that perspective. And so financial dependence on God that way is outside of the mindset change that you need to take on, is really understand then the intended to control money and the money control you. If you really practice and discipline yourself to consider things like delayed gratification as an example, if you are able to practice and imbibe it, it becomes easier for you to budget, save, and to recognize that you can do with things in the short term if it helps you meet the financial target and have a specific measurable target. There is, for example, trying to say whatever the target is, make sure it's specific, make sure it's time bound, but also make sure it's realistic. You know, don't think that you're going to save $1 million in 5 years if you don't have a job. Again, I subscribe to miracles, but I also believe that faith without works is dead.
Either of you gentlemen like to add anything onto that?
I think I like the way that he said that we're always going to be financially dependent on God and think of money not as the end, but just another resource that God can. That's very insightful, because that's actually the way that we should be able to look at things.
He is our Jehovah Jireh.
Yeah, he's our provider. And also, he used a couple of key words there. One was discipline, and another was delayed gratification. And actually, you know, if you're younger right now and you listen to what he just said, that's a big step ahead from what some of us learn the hard way. But if you'll start to save now, then it'll grow as you get, as time goes by. So even if times are hard, if you have that saving attitude, then you'll still save even in the hard times. I actually know some people that that's been their attitude since they were very young, and it's very good in their later years.
Compounding interest is your best friend, especially when you're young. It's if you look at just $1, even if it's in a bank or a CD, yet alone in the stock market or more high return type investment, the return may catch up payments, lump sums.
Anywhere,
So, compound interest is your friend, especially when you have youth and time on your side. Start that process and don't look back.
Well, they actually say, especially if you're young, to actually start building your credit early. So as you get, especially for those that once they graduate from college, that their credit is at least established somewhat, and as they venture off into the real world, they're not starting all over again right at that moment. I think that's one of the things that I wish I would have done a little bit different when I was younger. Now, I had my own bank account, but I didn't have I wasn't taught to get a credit card and start building credit.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you have a credit card, be smart about having the credit card paid off each month. Whatever you put on it, pay it off, but build your credit, especially as a young person, so that you're better off later on in when you start off in a new adventure in the real world. You're better off. That's kind of one of the things we tried to do with our girls, is to kind of establish and teach them to work on their credit, so when they finish college, that they would be somewhat on a firm foundation, or a firmer foundation they would have been if they didn't have that established. So.
Absolutely. And Sister Gail, I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. We're working on the audio, and you're able to hear some of us right now, but I just want you to know that we see your comment, and we are working on that. And absolutely, and I love that answer of just, being financially independent, but being dependent on the Lord. I think that's such an important point to bring up. And I think especially throughout this past year, but I mean, even before that, I know I can speak on some struggles that my family has definitely gone through with unemployment and money problems and just things in that sort of area. But there's been a lot of financial, I guess I would say, on a lot of different people because of the pandemic. Maybe it's for other reasons. And so I would just kind of like to open the floor to all three of you, if you wouldn't mind sharing either some of your own experiences with similar situations, or just what advice you would give to somebody who may be struggling right now financially.
Well, that's an interesting question, and an important one too. Let me see in a couple of ways, because I recognize, depending on where people fall within the spectrum, the challenges they'll face will be perhaps different. For someone, for example, who might be unemployed, lost their job as a result of a business closure or furlough, and I want to be very careful when I say this, because I certainly recognize this is deeply personal for the person who might be in this situation and hearing me speak, and so I don't want to come off at all callous. But when I talk to people in these kinds of situations, one of the things I tell them is, be honest. Let's be honest. Right? This has happened. We can't change it. Let's look forward. But also in looking forward, let's also be practical. I'm not one of those people, for example, that will tell you that coal jobs are coming back, or automobile jobs are coming back in Detroit, and let's hope against all hope. Let's be as much.
Absolutely.
And so you recognize, if I'm in a particular area that is either particularly hard hit or is very unlikely to recover, then let's be honest about what other alternatives or options that we have. And so that becomes a question then of, how can I retool myself with new skill sets? One of the easy ways you can do that is through apprenticeship for really technical jobs, polytechnics, community colleges. You don't have to go back and get an entire 4-year degree. And I know it can be daunting, especially if you're on the older side of age, where it's like, well, I'm 50, I can't go back to school. But you're 50, you have responsibilities, you have to figure something out, and I think that's one way to do it. For those who are in a situation where they're maybe making less money than they are right now, or making just about the same, but just the regular challenges of COVID, one of the things I tell people is leaning into the unintended consequences of COVID. From a personal standpoint, one of the things I was happy about COVID is I saved a lot of money because I ate out less. I drove my car less. And so I was able to save the amount of money that I paid on parking, as well as also fuel. So take the time to really capture the savings that have come as a result of COVID, and then choose to say, how can I reapply those monies in other particular areas? Maybe it's an opportunity to build an emergency fund. Maybe it's an opportunity to build a savings fund. One of the good things that has come out of the pandemic is that we've seen across the country an exponential increase in the amount of savings. One of the things I do is I serve on the board of a credit union, and one of the positive outcomes has been that the amount of savings of our members has increased. And so that's good. So the question is, as we come out of the pandemic, be careful not to revert back to the old consumerist approach of spending.
Right.
Instead, try to figure out other ways you can be better disciplined with your money.
Now, we've faced some things that, COVID is one of the things that are, let's say, unique to the time that we live in, and also the big freeze in this part of the country that really changed, challenged a lot of people, especially, but one of the things that I've noticed lately is a lot of help wanted signs. I mean, there are people that are actually, people are tooling back up. They're having some confidence in what's happening in around them now, and they're saying, hey, look, we need more people to work. And I think that's a good sign. But one of the things, I'll be honest with you, is in the years past was I worked in the trades. I worked as a welder. I worked as a carpenter. I worked as a mechanic. I worked as a plumber. A lot of things like that. And at different times through the years, there were like times when they weren't building houses anymore. So I had to find something else to do. So I went to work in a steel company. And I started off at not the lowest salary, but next to the lowest salary. And, it took me a couple of years, and I made a third of what I made on my job. But I was able to, take care of my family. And actually, that was one of the only the times that I actually had insurance and vacation, and it was it really turned out to be really better, even though I made less money because I had benefits. But one of the things that I want to say that I think is very, very important is learn to be adaptable. Don't
That's
get
good.
locked into one particular thing. You can do more than you think. And at times I had to work at a much lower paying job for as much as a year. But then, one time I even went to work at a furniture factory. And so that turned into be, almost a year there. But still, again, they started building houses again. A guy called me and said, look, what are you doing right now? I said, man, I'm building chair legs, Come on, let's go build some houses. So be adaptable. And I think that's as a Christian also, is we need to learn to be adaptable to the situations that are around us, whether they're financial, social, whatever they are. But especially financially, one of the things that we need to realize as Christians that is that we can get too locked into one thing. And I think that learning to be adaptable as far as job is one thing, but you know, I thank God for what He has provided for me, because I didn't have sense enough to do it myself. I mean, just honest, you know, you're giving good advice, and the thing is that Scott said, you said, when you're young, and I want to tell you the term young doesn't mean 15 or 16. It can mean 40 or 50 or, you know, start wherever you're at.
Start where you're at.
Right?
I wanted to add to your adaptability that you said, and even what Linus was saying, one of the things I think is key in all this, too, that we overlook so much is, especially when the time as an electrician when work here in Austin kind of dried up, when I was laid off for a year and a half, things were real tight. And I know what it feels like when you watch everything that you have built, saved, gone, disappear. One of the things that I will say this is, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think, especially from a man's perspective, and trust me, this was one of the hardest things that I had to learn, was actually to ask for help. I needed help. Things got to the point where we didn't have the funds coming in, and I needed help. And you know, sometimes you do have to swallow your pride and ask for help. But I stress, don't be afraid to ask for help. It is so crucial, so very important. And trust me, even from a man's perspective, look, I went through all the things. I'm the provider. You know, I got to take care of my family. I've got to be tough, strong, and provide. It was a heavy burden. It was a whole lot more than I could, in all truthfulness, that I could bear. And but I can tell you this, that as I look back over those times, as hard and as tough as they were, God still was our provider. God still provided for us in those times. I mean, sometimes money came in, and we still to this day have no idea where that money came from. But God provided, and we always had enough to get by, and until things picked up for us. But one of the things that I had to learn through this process was to ask for help, and especially from a man's perspective at times, because we're taught to be a certain way, and some of that I think needs to change, and we also need to teach to, when you need help, to ask for help.
Absolutely, and I love, Pastor Scott, that you brought up the point of feeling that burden, because I think that's something that a lot of people go through when it comes to finances. But I think along with that too, especially in today's world, there can be a sense of comparison to other people. You know, maybe if someone even has a job and they don't make as much as somebody else, they can kind of, think to themselves, oh, if, I wish I could afford that for my family, or I wish I could provide that for my wife or my children, for whoever it may be. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that and kind of how those correlate together.
I compare Linus to me all the time. I tell the youth all the time, look, go to school, go to college, do well, find something you love to do so you succeed. Don't work as hard as I've had to do over the years, but be successful. Now, being facetious in what I'm saying, but it is so easy to look at what somebody else has and does and not know how much debt that they're in and how big of a hole that they keep digging themselves. And all we can see is what is going on. And the thing is that actually God has called us, especially as Christians, we're to be stewards of what He has given us, not stewards of what everybody else has, of what God has. And I think we need to actually look back at that perspective that we have to take care of what God has provided us, not worry about what everybody else has.
And don't be successful is a term that's not really easily defined. And I think that we need to take that and use it on a personal level, not on somebody else's level, comparing ourselves to somebody else, because you can be successful without having what somebody else does.
That's
and
true.
you need to realize that. It's good.
Being happy with what you have.
And the thing is that I'm just going to say this. I know I'm a pastor, and everybody expects pastors to talk about money. But I do want you to understand this. I want you to, this is really important. If you're a Christian, you're a believer, and you need to understand that you need to be faithful in your giving, and God's going to be faithful in His provision. So
right.
they're tied together. And I could tell you, I could tell you the whole thing about it, but being faithful in your giving is one of the things that is going to help you receive not only just provision from God, but sometimes just absolute blessings from God when you don't. Even if you're going through a rough patch, you need to remain faithful in your giving. And I'm not talking from, own experience. I have a friend, he had a guy that was giving to the ministry, and this guy was very, very, successful and wealthy. No. So there is as a Christian, there is a part of that's us that we need to be faithful in our giving.
The point about tithing, I think, is so important. I know we've had many a conversation
Yes.
about this, and one of the reasons I want to speak up about it is because it's something that's so my financial dependence on God is the fact that I recognize that everything that I have or can have is because of Him. There are moments where I think I did all of my. I love the fact that it reminds me constantly of how He's doing things in places that I don't see or I'm able to experience. But on the principle of tithing, I think that's critically important, because I think one of the big misfortunes of the Christian experience is that we've come to expect that we pay tithes, and we don't pay tithes.
Mm-hmm.
We give tithes.
Yes, that's right.
Because the 100 is His. He just asked us 10. Now we've been talking about tithing.
Right.
And so it's something that has stuck with me that, for example, my testimony about tithing is I don't tithe off of my net. I tithe off of my gross. God gave me the gross.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Sam may take his cut, but God is going to take His first.
Right.
But I also had to create we go back to that word discipline, that helped me make sure.
Yes.
Because I started getting to the point where, you move from college and you're now working, you start making some serious money, or what you think is serious money, and then it becomes a little tougher to write a bigger check. My biggest shock I every year is when I fill out those contributions. Yes. I see it, way too much money, because I could have done some of this myself. But practically speaking, one of the things I set out to do was I have a separate bank account, and it's the only account of mine from which I write checks. That's and good, that's the one for the church. And so whether or not things happen, that money, my tithe is, I've come up with a general estimate of what it is, and then I put something extra on top.
Right.
And that goes in there, and I don't touch that, because all that comes out from that account is my tithing to the church, and everything else is for me to spend. But because I've done that, I am 100% confirmed belief that God has always provided for me. I have never lacked. And He can always trust me with more, because He can give me more, I have given to him what he has asked in obedience, but I've also given to others.
Right.
And so I
Right.
know we could go so many different ways when we talk about giving, but tithing to me is the first level. Then there's the offering. And so I give to other aspects of the church and other, worthy causes. But then I also give to others. And it follows to me the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Crowd, but instead they got 5 loaves and 2 fish. And what did they do? They had a good sense to give it to Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He prays for it, blesses it, gives it back to them, and tells them to give to others. And they gave to others, and all those people were satisfied. And then they each had a basket full that they were able to take back with themselves. That's something that I've lived. It's something that I encourage people to do. How do you tithe big? Well, you tithe small first. When you're faithful with small, he can entrust you with more. The parable of the talents is a perfect example of this. He gives to us according to our abilities. When you prove yourself, to who has more, he gives more. But it's more responsibility. He doesn't give you so you can now go spend it and live frivolously. He gives you more responsibility. And I am honored by the responsibility of the money that he gives me, but I am also humbled because I know I depend on him and that he can hopefully trust me to be as faithful with bigger as I was with smaller.
I liked how you said that you were taught. That's one of the things I can truly say that's my mom taught all of us as kids. I mean, when you look at it and you think about it, it's 10%. But for whatever reason it is, like you were saying a few minutes ago, the more money you start making and that number increases, but it still stays the same percentage. It's not that God has increased the percentage and all of a sudden he's taking more. The percentage has always stayed the same. But I thank God that my mom taught us as kids the importance of giving our tithe and paying our tithe. And to me, that's a treasure that I am so thankful that my mom did teach us. And I really believe that this is something that we need to continue to teach our young kids and our in children's church and those age, and even hopefully our congregants are passing it on to their kids and teaching it in their kids. I don't want to embarrass, I'm not going to say his name, but I can tell you there's a young man that I've been very much impressed with and watching him give every Sunday since he started working. And to watch him do it faithfully and see him do it is something that I know Tanya and I have sat there and, when we're talking to each other, said things going, how awesome it is to see that. And, it's those things that, make you feel good and watching it. And it's not my kids, it's someone else's kid, watching someone else's kid do it. And it's just neat when you see that. And it's not like, they're not grudgingly writing or putting they do it cheerfully and they do it faithfully as you watch them. And I shouldn't say that I'm watching them. Not that I'm prying, but I watch because I'm literally in awe of what I'm seeing. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's all right. Jesus
okay.
watched the people
I
that
was
used
trying
money
to
at
say,
the temple.
he's trying to get. He's trying to get out of it now. He can't.
I didn't want it to sound bad. It's not like I'm prying and watching everybody as they give. I'm not. It was just it was neat watching.
Yeah, now you're trying to go
him.
around in circles.
Yeah, because now it was like, pastor's watching me.
One thing that I do want to say again is that, and Linus mentioned it, Scott mentioned it. Discipline and one of the things that when you go through rough times, you lose your job or maybe you work for yourself and you just don't have that much money coming in, then one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is pray and just let God. God hasn't forgot where you are. And usually you need to understand the people around you love you, and they want to help you too. So don't begrudge yourself that. Somehow, some way it's got misconstrued to where if you need help, something's wrong. And that's not the way that this whole process is designed to be. And we're supposed to be actually looking for those that we can help, and take advantage of the opportunity to help people when we can. If you find yourself, pray. Don't give in to discouragement. Be adaptable. And, I've seen friends, say, well, look, I don't have any of the kind of work you do, but I've got some work to do. It doesn't hurt to do that, and you can take care of your business as you go through the day. Just don't give up, because things will start up again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to address a couple of comments before we close out this evening. Sister Gail and Brother Lewis, we're so glad you guys are joining us. I'm hopeful that the audio became clear to you guys. I think it did. I think when we were talking about tithes and offerings, Sister Gail commented us too. So we love you guys so much, and of course are so inspired by you and your giving. And Tanya also commented and said, Linus, you are such a wealth of knowledge and an incredible blessing. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us, which we absolutely agree with. We're so thankful that he joined us this evening. And before we close out tonight, just one final question for you guys. So for anyone out there who may be watching tonight or who may come across this video later, and if they may feel that they are at their wits' end when it comes to how much money they have, they feel they've stretched it as far as they could go, and they just don't know what to do. I know you guys have given some great advice thus far, but I just would like to ask for one final thing you could say to anyone who may be in that position tonight. What would it be, and how would you like to close out this evening?
I'll ask you this one question. It's a mountain of credit card debt. It might be at exactly the miracle.
Join us for these discussions.